Fantastic.
That was perfect. All right. Thanks again for coming back for the next presentation. I am going to introduce Michael Koenka.
Koenka.
He's all right. Michael, go ahead.
Koenka.
Koenka. Let's do that together. Koenka.
Koenka.
All right. He's a recognized leader in AI driven innovation, technology scouting, and strategic foresight. He's the founder of Lightbeam Insight, the world's first frontier innovation agency, helping it to establish B2B industrial enterprises identify and capitalize on emerging market opportunities. He's also CEO of Get Sparked, Europe's premier AI community, comprising over 600 leading experts, founders, investors, and executives, advancing industrial applications of artificial intelligence. His clients include global enterprises such as NVIDIA, SHV Global, and HP. His proprietary AI driven methodology analyzes over 2 million patents and research papers to identify emerging high value technology applications 18 to 36 months ahead of traditional market indicators. So we're really excited to hear about this. Um, and Michael holds a master's degree in public affairs, management, international, and development affairs from Carleton University. He's a professor at the Center for Postgraduate Education in the Netherlands. And we are thrilled to see what we got here. So
Thanks
go
for
for it.
having me. Good morning, guys. Really awesome being, especially here in the experimental station, because as pretty much most of you DuPonters, DuPontites, it's DuPonters, right? Most of you people from DuPont have heard of, Stephanie Kolek, I believe. And if you haven't, when researching this talk, I figured I want to make it a little bit relevant, a little more contextual, and I did a little deep dive into Stephanie's work. And what actually happened a while ago, Stephanie was working on uh, polymers, a solution. Her peers actually would come up with, more clear solutions, and then she came up with something that was a little cloudy, little weird, that conventional wisdom would have otherwise said, oh, you should just get rid of it, start again. In fact, Stephanie was actually afraid to take this solution to her boss, thinking that she messed something up. Now, that solution, that cloudy polymer um, that was totally messing up with whatever she thought she was doing, actually ended up triggering something in her. That ineffable curiosity that underpins true scientific inquiry. Now, Stephanie was compelled to test this further, to look deeper into it. And that decision led to the discovery of Kevlar and secured DuPont's dominance in the market space for generations, locking in entirely new market spaces, getting them this opportunity that few were able to see. And it was interesting, if you look at Stephanie's background as well, where she came from, what she was studying, or how she applied it, it had some features that I think were very useful to what we're talking about today. But what's remarkable about her discovery isn't the breakthrough itself, but the invisible pattern beneath it, a mathematical signature that preceded the innovation and could have actually foretold its eventual emergence. And so the pattern connects her work with another legacy of American innovation and technological vision, the Wright family. Now, when you think of the Wrights, we naturally picture Orville and Wilbur at Kitty Hawk, that transcendent moment where human curiosity conquered powered flight, space flight. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. But there's another Wright in this family of innovators whose insights actually can be even more valuable to us today. In 1936, Theodore Wright, this guy over here, was studying aircraft manufacturing. Seems fitting given his family legacy. When his analysis revealed something interesting, that with each doubling of cumulative production, costs were decreasing by a consistent and predictable percentage. And so this became known as Wright's law. It's a reliable pattern that reveals how technological progress actually unfolds through accumulated experience. And so decades later, you guys have probably heard of Gordon Moore and his observation about semiconductor density doubling every 2 years would become the more famous, the more referenced, the more familiar template for technological prediction. But what's interesting is that both of these men were pattern seekers. They were looking for the hidden rhythms that lay just beneath the surface of human advancement and discovery. And yet, when MIT researchers recently examined and compared Wright's law with Moore's law, they actually realized, based on these competing models of innovation, that Wright's law actually outperforms Moore's law in predicting technological advancement across industries. What's also an interesting feature is the difference between Wright's law's cumulative knowledge concept and Moore's law's focus on time. And so this actually changes everything about how we understand how innovation works, how most companies tend to fixate on these very time-based logics that forecasting in a time-based sense rarely has the same kind of effect as the cumulative experience. So really transformative breakthroughs, the really big aha moments, the eureka moments, actually happen as a result of Wright's law patterns. And so these are driven by what you would say the convergence of knowledge, of domain intersections across both domains, not time and not trends necessarily. And so in the time between Qualix's discovery and today, so much has changed. I mean, our entire worlds have shifted. Our worlds have actually completely changed beyond recognition since. So we've actually been able to clock 4 significant and fundamental shifts in the way information is consumed, used, and leveraged for innovation. And so it's shaped it in a way that none of our existing tools have actually been designed to navigate. In fact, Alexa was mentioning that we didn't even, some of the stuff that we have now isn't designed for the stuff that we have tomorrow. I have some notes from I'm gonna open these up. I actually was really enthralled by Alexa's talk, so I made some notes. It's always good to reference other talks while we're doing this, right? But first, one of the biggest things that we're noticing, and as it seems almost redundant to mention, but one of the first things that you notice is that the volume of data, of information, has changed. In about the span of a week, you see roughly 100,000 different journal articles and research papers published. In a year, that turns into close to 5 million in total every year. What a single research and development expert could reasonably process in a month is published before lunch on Monday. That's insane. And that speaks to previous speaker, Jerry, when he mentioned that volume as a result of AI is infinitely and exponentially increased, which matches the tools we have are adding more noise, adding more volume, making it even more challenging to find our way through the mess. The needle is no longer in a haystack. The needle is in a hay globe, if you will. That's a terrible joke. I was riffing, it failed, but that's experimentation, right? The thing is that our capacity, like Alexa mentioned, our capacity to process this information hasn't really evolved. We're using the same methods, the same technologies, even the same experts and the same consultancies to solve new problems. There's a saying doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of, yeah, you all know it. You're all just as crazy as me, I guess. But the volume of potentially disruptive signals here has increased. So, like, finding these signals has become even more challenging. And so, this increase by orders of magnitude is making our jobs as innovators, as seekers of new ideas, even more challenging. And so, but not only has it increased in volume, it's increased in speed. Right now, things are going so fast, so much faster. The difference between ChatGPT version 1 and version 2 was a mere matter of months, but it reshaped the entire AI landscape instantly. And every iteration just gets faster and more profound. The velocity of innovation cycles has compressed dramatically. Kevlar gave DuPont 20 years of market dominance, and now today's breakthrough materials get commoditized maybe in 3-4 years. The speed and time of this is insane. The difference between the Wright brothers' first flight and the moon landing was actually 66 years apart. But the difference between the first smartphone and AI-powered assistants, 10 years. That's huge. One was generational, the other one was a blink of the eye. And this is expansive because it means that being slightly late to market no longer means a couple points off of your shares. It means losing and missing entire category creation opportunities. This is huge. A blink and you're dead. And so much so that this sheer variety of information sources has expanded beyond traditional boundaries. Breakthroughs don't come from predictable domains. I mentioned Stephanie Kwolek at the beginning. When I did my research on her, she actually wanted to be a fashion designer and then went into studying chemistry and material sciences because her mom said she was very, very focused, very driven about, very stubborn about getting things done. She said, I'll go into science, as one does. When you're stubborn, you go into medicine and science, right? If only my parents heard that. And so, but it was because of that particular proclivity towards mixing fabrics and trying new things and being bold and then bringing in material sciences that perhaps it was those disparate entry points that led to the discovery. I can't say anything about her, but that's what that's what we're going to be talking about here. And so what we say is that breakthroughs no longer come from these predictable domains. They emerge from unexpected convergence points between and amongst technologies in these blind spots that a lot of researchers, a lot of experts are missing. 20 years ago, your R&D team needed to track maybe 3 or 5 different technology domains. Today, the really transformative technologies emerge from some intersection of 30 plus different technology domains, which creates, if you think about it, an exponential explosion of potential convergence points. You're just adding more intersection points. And as Jerry mentioned, when you step out of that bubble of self-referential engagement, you increase the likelihood, the surface area, if you will, bless you, on of the technology of the new ideas. You make it more likely to come up with these new ideas. So this dynamism is really exciting when you look at how scary the breakthrough paths we're looking at right now. And so that's why the value of what's at stake has never been higher. Technology decisions have moved from operational concerns, sorry, this is clicker, to more operational imperatives. Right now, companies that missed key technology shifts like Kodak, like Nokia, like Blockbuster. I mean, maybe I might be dating myself. I'm sure I've hit at least one of them. Lost over $100 billion in market value, despite being the market leaders. even crazy enough, Kodak actually invented digital photography. They had it just sitting in a drawer. But some scientists, I was like, oh yeah, no, John, that's a crazy idea. In fact, I'm flippant about it. They thought it would cannibalize their existing film market, and so tried to keep it under wraps without actually seeing that opportunity. And so, in the past, missing technology, missing these opportunities meant playing catch up. Throw some extra researchers on that. They'll figure it out. Today, it means something else. What's that? Oh yeah. It means extinction. It means go to monster.com and fill out your applications. But these four forces, volume, velocity, variety, value, all converge to create somewhat of an unprecedented innovation decision-making crisis. And I'm not even trying to understate this. I'm Canadian, so we try to keep it a little bit lower. Because the methodologies developed for a slower, more predictable world, they simply can't function in today's environment. They just can't work. Not for the fault of theirs. They were designed for a different time. And as such, unless we want to be crazy, we need to adapt. We need to change. And I think the impact, I'm hoping that the impact on you guys, not hoping, I'm hoping you'll see yourselves in this, the impact on innovation leaders is quite profound. As you sit in your office, reviewing the innovation pipeline you have in front of you, these forces manifest not as abstract trends, but as an intensely personal burden that you're facing, one that you probably largely carry all on your own. Your morning begins, as I would imagine, with an inbox overflowing with potential signals, research summaries, competitive intelligence reports, startup announcements, every number of different comments from friends and peers in the industry saying, oh, have you seen this? Have you heard that? Have you read about this that you may have missed? Each demanding evaluation, study, care, attention. But which ones really matter? Which are the ones that are gonna change our business? Which are just noise? The volume alone makes real, valuable, comprehensive assessment almost impossible. Yet missing the critical signal in that noise could prove catastrophically expensive. And so in your most honest moments, I presume, you might say to yourself what a few innovation leaders actually dare to say out loud, that the expertise paradox has become crippling. The very technical specialists that you rely on, I'm sure we all look like that, that are brilliant in their domains, because they should be, that's their job, they are amazing, are trapped in silos of specialization. They study their respective disciplines diligently, as they should. Yet the most disruptive opportunities, the most game-changing events in technology and discovery actually emerge precisely at the boundaries between these territories, in the blind spots where no single expert has clear, solid vision. And so when you present to the board, to your supervisors, to management, you project confidence. You have to. It's just what you got to do. Yet, beneath that professional certainty that you're projecting lies a gnawing question, lies a real challenge. Are we looking in the right places? Do we know if we're looking in the right places? Your organization commits millions to innovation, to different initiatives based on what amounts to educated guesswork dressed in the language of strategic certainty. Your consultants tell you, yes, this is exactly where it should be. Your research says, oh, absolutely. The board doesn't want to hear about complexity. They don't care. They want to know, and they want to be assured that your innovation investments won't be obsolete tomorrow. And so this burden, I would imagine, manifests itself physically. The persistent tension you feel in your shoulders as you approve another seven-figure investment based on conflicting expert opinions. The slight hesitation in your voice when someone asks you if your competition has announced a breakthrough, actually can have a major effect on your business lines. The restless nights wondering if somewhere a technology is developing in a garage or in another lab or in a research institution that you have no foresight about that could transform and reshape your entire industry while you're looking somewhere else. And this reality creates a very painful and challenging dilemma, something that's been echoed in a lot of conversations I've had with people in your industry as well. Do we commit significant resources based on incomplete information? Do we put it all on red? Or do we hedge across way too many initiatives, which ironically ensures that none of those initiatives receive the focus really needed for breakthrough success? Either choice still leaves you vulnerable, exposed even. But the most damaging consequence goes a little bit beyond what we're talking about here as well. It's not missing out. It's the gradual, slow, very grainy erosion of your innovation culture. Your teams start being hesitant, risk averse, start following instead of leading. Top talent starts leaving for companies that anticipate the next wave, not react and then respond and try to scramble, unprepared to meet the wave, to meet what's changing. As you look ahead to your next quarterly innovation review, I guess you might ask yourself, is this just what the new norm is? Should we just accept it? Is this life now? I don't mean to be so bleak, but is the best that anyone could do just to make an educated guess and hope, like some twisted Hunger Games of innovation, if probability lies forever in your favor? After all, honestly, what alternative really exists? What choice do we actually have? But what if there was another way? I'm having my Steve Jobs moment, sorry. But what if there was another way? One more thing. And again, I might be dating myself again, so forgive me, but do you remember that moment in Back to the Future 2 where Marty McFly opens up the sports almanac? One of the first things he says when he opens it up, I can't lose. It's one of those seminal moments in the film. And in a flash, he sees exactly what it's worth. He knows that knowing outcomes that only others can guess will give him a huge advantage. Biff Tannen in the movie actually uses this to gain unimaginable power and wealth and transformed himself from being this hapless follower to a huge magnate, a leader. Now, what if I told you that breakthrough technologies can actually show unique mathematical signatures years before most people actually see them, before they even disrupt any market out there? Signatures as distinct and unique as fingerprints, visible only to those with the right kind of lens. Now, imagine getting to work now armed with certainty, mathematical certainty, numbers, calculations, real, tangible data. Not expert opinions, not trend reports, not the latest news brief or something out of the Financial Times that caught your eye on the cab ride there. Your focus and direction is rooted in a clear understanding of which technologies deserve your focus, your convergence focus that you're planning on capitalizing on, and why. Now, the next time your boss or a C-suite exec comes to you and says, they get back from, let's say, maybe they get back from a golf trip, and they ask you to investigate some overly hyped technology that their golf partner's grandson's cousin's brother's sister was raving about. Let's go into FTEs, guy, or like NFTs. Sorry, wrong acronym. That their kid swears will be the next big thing, and this is what I imagine that would look like. With the dude on the right is like, "That's cute, sir. Thank you." you know, you don't give them the "we'll look into it." Let me get back to you. We'll have a quick look at it. You crack open your dashboard and you show them exactly where that technology stands in its development cycle, which domains it connects with, and more importantly, whether it displays the mathematical signatures of a genuine breakthrough. That's exciting. Your innovation portfolio is no longer, spread across dozens of speculative bets. Now, 80% of your resources are concentrated on the 3 to 5 technologies that show clear patterns of imminent breakthrough. You've cut out the noise. You've doubled down on your efficiency, on what really matters. You decline investing on seemingly promising technologies, not because we don't have any budget for it, but because you can actually demonstrate that they lack the cross-domain fertilization patterns that can predict true potential. Your IP strategy has shifted from becoming defensive to proactive, preemptive even. And you've stopped guessing, and now you know exactly what to do. You secure patents 2-3 years in advance before anyone knows what's going on. By the time your competitors know what's going on or catch on to it, your legal team is already set to show how they're probably in breach. And this is actually a snapshot from one of our dashboards. It's an actual snapshot, of course, redacted, because, other people paid for it. But now, because you're not fighting for market share, you're creating entirely new categories with no competition for the first critical 18 months of that idea's existence. Analyst calls are now saying you're some kind of guru about how do they see this coming? What's going on? What are they smoking at DuPont? Analysts, they have this uncanny ability to, like, how do you have this ability to predict where things are going? Your professional legacy transforms from anxiety about missing changes in the industry to recognition as a true field leader. You become known not merely for success, but for fundamentally changing how innovation decisions are made. This isn't fantasy. I wish it was. This isn't fantasy. I don't wish it was. This is my business, but it's exactly what happened to our clients, L'Oreal and their innovation team, when they moved from guesswork to certainty, to core mathematical certainty, when they gained their own version of Marty's almanac. I wish I had like a great Scott moment when I handed it to them. I totally said that when I hit send, just for the record, but it was literally just my wife looking at me like, why did you just say great Scott as I sent an email? It was somewhat muted, but anyways, what happens is that after analyzing 2.3 million patents over 30 different technology domains, we've been able to identify the mathematical signatures that predict breakthrough innovations with an accuracy of 87%. DARPA says the same methodology brings you up to 94. I round it to 90%. And if I put on my marketing hat, I say we're right 9 times out of 10. Sounds great. I'll probably have my CTO shoot me if I say anything less than the accurate numbers. So just for that, I'm putting it up there. But, it's really cool. It's really awesome. And what's even cooler is that this happens at least 2 to 3 years before anyone knows what's going on. It's ridiculously exciting, the stuff that we're able to predict here. And so like Theodore Wright discovering patterns in aircraft manufacturing that others missed, we've developed a couple of key indicators that form what we call our convergence intelligence system. The first is what we call development cycle. A development cycle measures how quickly technological fields are accelerating or decelerating. It's the rate that this field is actually changing. Now, anyone who's surfed the beaches near Cape Henlopen knows that reading the water is everything. I'm not a surfer. I did some research about things. I don't know. Who's a surfer here? Is this analogy totally falling? That's great. Thanks, chat, for. Never mind. Anyone who's been to a beach and has seen water going back and forth knows about currents, right? You don't have to put on a board. You can just bobble around and knows that reading the water is actually everything. Even if you've been on a boat, you know that reading the water is everything. And so just like surfers and seamen actually spot the underwater currents in the water, development cycle reveals these invisible, forces beneath the innovation itself, the deep movements that'll eventually shape what breaks through. Now, another criteria we have is called growth rate, and it tracks the patterns of how technologies are being referenced and adapted across and adopted across seemingly adjacent or unrelated fields, like Stephanie Kwolek's fashion background influencing her discoveries in material sciences. When we detect unusual citation patterns between industrial refrigeration, for example, and cosmetics, we're witnessing the early formation of breakthrough innovation. Just like I said, Kwolek connected polymer chemistry with advanced materials and manufacturing processes. And the third is what we've coined as our technology investment readiness level, or TURL. It's probably the most powerful metric we have in our toolbox. Now, TURL score is a proprietary metric that basically quantifies the exponential trajectory that emerges when technologies intersect from completely different and yet complementary fields. This essentially captures Wright's law dynamics in one variable that helps you get a great bird's eye view of where the technology space is headed. And so like NASA has TRL, we've added an I for investment because, get creative. And so this tells you basically how ready a technology is for investment. And it helps you consider both its development stage and its market factors. It helps investors understand and innovators assess exactly whether a technology is not only technically sound, but also poised for commercialization. A critical point mentioned in Alexis' speech earlier is that how do we know if what we're betting on is going to turn into something valuable? How do we know whether it's going to be commercializable? As one thing I loved, and I'm totally stealing this, Lakshmi, is how do we reduce the chances you take on the choices you make? I mean, maybe. And so this is interesting. And what's even cooler is that when you start looking at these signals, you can develop what's a sense of what's called a signal storm. And so essentially, these three indicators, when they align, they create this sort of signal storm, which helps us predict breakthroughs years in advance. So it's a rare and very powerful phenomenon that in the innovation landscape is just mind-boggling. So imagine standing on the shore when multiple weather systems start converging. The weather shifts, the barometric pressure drops, the winds change, conditions intensify dramatically. A signal storm works the same way, but in technology. When we detect rapid development cycles across multiple fields at the same time, unusual patterns of cross-industry growth rates connecting previously separate domains, and specifically unusually high Turl scores, we're basically looking at the starting points of exponential improvement potential. And so when these forces converge, when these powers combine, they create a mathematical signature as distinctive as cloud formations that basically precede a perfect storm. This is something visible only to those with the right kinds of detection systems. And so these signal storms have preceded every single major innovation breakthrough that we've analyzed, from advanced materials to biotechnology convergence, typically appearing 18 to 36 months before they actually, traditional researchers actually recognize their significance. Now, let me show you what this looks like in practice. And I've been asked to give some kind of a case study bits. This is the most amount of text you'll ever see me put on a slide. Feel free to read it casually, but I'll just walk you through it really briefly. L'Oreal's R&D team was exploring technologies for climate adaptive beauty technologies, solutions that will maintain their viscosity and sort of the quality of the materials across increasingly extreme weather conditions. And so using our system, we were able to identify a signal storm forming at the unexpected intersection of industrial refrigeration and cosmetic delivery systems. Now, if you ask a traditional chemist or a researcher on their team, they had completely overlooked this connection. They were focused instead on conventional chemistry applications. They were focused on what they knew best, their own fields. And our analysis revealed that cooling technologies from industrial applications were showing a 32% growth rate when applied to cosmetic delivery. It's a classic Wright's law pattern that actually indicated massive untapped potential. Now, more importantly, the signal storm metrics predicted this emerging field would reach $682 million by 2034, with one of those materials showing a performance enhancement potential, a rate of efficiency of almost 200 times what it's at currently. So what happened next demonstrates the basic power of seeing things early. L'Oreal is now able to secure strategic patents easily a year and a half to 2 years in advance of anyone else, before their competitors even recognize. In fact, less than 10% of their competition even held patents in that space. 40% was held by research institutions they already had partnerships with. And so rather than just providing more information, we guided them with insights, showing them where they needed to invest, who they needed to talk to. In fact, I even gave my contact at L'Oreal 3 of the researchers' phone numbers they can call the next day to start talking about patent acquisition. So more than just insights over information, actionable tasks that people can do to capture that market years in advance. And so they were able to establish partnerships. And then within 6 weeks of identifying the signal storm, they also mapped hundreds of startups that they could partner with and position themselves to capture close to 75% of the market in what's now projected to be a 1.4 billion euro category. If I convert that to the US and the way the market's going now, that's like a $200 billion, no, I'm kidding. But that's insane. And what that really means is that for every euro they spent or every dollar they spent, it turned into $175,000 of untapped demand. This is nuts. And so for this, the true value, I think it goes beyond just the metrics and just the numbers and just the marketing speak. It's that they've established and are able to establish a leadership position in an entirely new product category where they face almost no competition. They've transformed what would have been years of incremental improvement and testing and back and forth and more research and everything into a quantum leap that competitors are now scrambling to understand what the heck is going on. Pardon my French. Now this The complete process shows our entire signal to value capture cycle. Now I can already see some of your questions forming here. How much work does this take? Where does all the data come from? How quickly can you implement this? When are we going to actually see some results? How long does it really take? Am I going to wait another year and a half like we usually do for research to get us any information? And most critically, what's the actual return on investment, the other ROI? These are questions that a lot of management teams ask us when working with us. The surprising answer is that working with us demands pretty low investment pretty low investment in time from your team. Your senior R&D people just need a couple hours for calibration talks, and then we're good to go. After that, one of your innovation team leaders serves as our point of contact, and then typically dedicating less than a couple hours a week to process at most. That's all. It's pretty low touch. And meanwhile, the value that you can get is transformative. Our system can access over 97 million patents and research papers across over 30 different domains through proprietary channels that even some universities can't reach. This is huge. You don't need any data infrastructure. You don't need research hours behind this. Yet you still gain access to the most comprehensive technology intelligence available anywhere right now. It's massive. And so implementation begins with one focused 90-minute calibration workshop. We have a quick talk, we give you a deep dive, and then we end up mapping your different priority areas. And this can happen as soon as next week, with our system beginning analysis immediately after. You get things like a global technology landscape. You get strategic technology deep dives that help you get a clear understanding. If anyone who has read any patent document out there, you know it's huge and convoluted. It's its own language. It's written by special patent lawyers. It's almost like doctor's handwriting, but for language. I mean, I know doctor's handwriting is in language as well, but you get the idea. It's crazy confusing. And so we simplify it. We help you turn that information into actionable insights, into what you can do with it, and then give you dashboards and insights about how to map your different technologies and how to get your key strategic advantage as a result. And so while traditional forecasting typically requires like over a year sometimes, on average is around 11 to 12 months of before delivering anything actionable, which of course by then we all know that nothing will have changed in the world in 11 months. Our approach produces initial signals, initial breakthrough signals in just 6 weeks, a month and a half. And comprehensive strategic recommendations, usually, if we're pushing it, 3 months. And that's me being generous, 3 months. It's insane how fast this insight, this information can be tapped. And so obviously the return on investment is particularly compelling, just by these numbers alone. The average innovations portfolio spreads across 15, 20, maybe even 30 different potential technologies, hoping a few succeed. It literally is that blindfolded, Hunger Games of darts. On the other hand, what if, like our clients, you can concentrate your efforts, your resources, your time, like 80% of these resources, the majority of it, on just three to five technologies that show the greatest mathematical signatures of winning out. We're able to give you clear, measurable insights about what's going on here to help you understand how to slash the waste and not the outcome, how to avoid that how to make sure you capture those 15% of successful technologies that are out there. So this focus approach has reduced innovation waste among our early partners. In essence, saving 3 out of every $4 that they spend, which is huge. L'Oreal got rid of 7 parallel research tracks that we were identified were low potential, eliminating possibly close to 4 million in R&D spend on dead end paths. That's just massive. And if you just think about the amount of time you spend on just exploring these routes, the amount of people you put onto it, the teams, 10, 15 people on a month-to-month basis, taking roughly 9, 10 months just to come up with an answer, $250,000, $500,000 every month, that's huge. And that's an order of magnitude greater than what it costs to get that insight from a system like ours. And so think about what this means for your science innovation. A few hours, maybe even if it's half a day of initial, input that you put in, transforms into millions in saved R&D costs, over a year of accelerated time to market, and the potential to capture majority market share in entirely new categories, which means that the gap between what you invest and what you receive isn't just significant, it's exponential. And I don't want to, I'm trying not to overuse that word, but we're talking orders of magnitude. It is huge and exponential. It's the data storm that we just saw in the funnel in the previous talk. What we're offering here is beyond just what anyone would call an innovation service. Essentially, what we're offering here is insurance against wasted time and hedged bets. We offer the mathematical certainty that you need to focus your resources where they will create maximum impact. This is a room full of amazingly high-performing talent that is draining on things that aren't going to lead anywhere. Imagine driving down a highway and realizing halfway down the road that you've gone the wrong way. We've all had to make a U-turn, but how far down the road do you want to go before you have to make that U-turn? Wouldn't you like to know that you're just going to go? Wouldn't you like to put it in that infamous Tesla and just forget about it and have it just take you there? This entire process gives you exactly what you need for presenting to management, to concrete timelines, minimal resource requirements, and most importantly, a proven framework for dramatically reducing innovation waste while increasing your hit rate. All these breakthrough technologies now become suddenly within your reach in material sciences, in any field you may study. And it's not, I say technologies a lot, but because we study all the patent data and research, essentially the unending unraveling of human discovery that we tap into, we're able to look into all these different phenomenally new spaces, these mind-bogglingly new technology areas that are poised to change the way the world works, giving you guys that access. I've always said in some of my conversations with you guys before that I've always wanted to connect Eureka to utility and make it as useful as possible, to connect our human drive to discovery and new ideas and make it useful and not have it die in some random lab where no one gets to see it. The things that really matter, that will transform the way we do business, the way we live our lives, are worth it to invest our time and energy on. And spending it elsewhere seems wasteful. And so I think I leave you with your choice today. Essentially, Theodore Wright discovered that technological progress follows clear, measurable, predictable patterns. These patterns emerge when knowledge converges across different domains. The material science leaders of tomorrow will be those that detect these patterns, these Wright's law patterns, with this high accuracy before anyone else has the chance to see them coming. Now, this advantage exists despite unprecedented technological acceleration. The volume, the velocity, the variety, and the value of innovation have transformed beyond all recognition. I think we can all agree to that. But the challenges have evolved dramatically, but so has our capability to navigate them. We have the technology. It does actually exist. And so like Stephanie Kwolek standing in this building, you stand, I think, at a pretty defining moment yourselves. Her decision to look into this cloudy, somewhat unconventional polymer led to Kevlar, transforming multiple industries and countless lives. I have friends and family that are still here today thanks to that invention. Now, maybe now, and fittingly down the hall from Stephanie's brilliant discovery, your opportunity here follows a similar choice. Follow convention or explore possibility. I think history's most transformative leaders, they share one very unique and distinguishing quality. They position themselves at these convergence points that we were talking about before others can even see the wave coming. They read the mathematical signatures, if you will, that forecast the future with certainty and not guesswork. Now, in 1961, Kennedy said that we choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. And so maybe now, just maybe, you face an equally bold choice to depart from doing what's always been done, to move from speculation to certainty, from following to leading, from reacting to even anticipating. And I think you need to ask yourself, do you want to be holding the almanac from the future or left wondering what others saw that you missed? But what's important here is that you don't actually have to make the choice today. But if you don't, I guarantee you that the choice will be made for you. Because the future truly belongs to those who see it coming. Thank you.
So we have about 5 minutes for some questions. And do anybody have, is there any that came in, Laura? I didn't see any questions from the room.
I'm not avoiding questions. I saw like 5 minutes into my speech, my shoe was untied.
Yeah, so if you could just kind of jump up to that table there maybe and get into the mic, that would be
Yes.
great. Thank you.
So Michael, what as research and velocity, as you stated, changes even on a monthly basis, an analysis you might do like for L'Oreal or whoever, 3 months later, if you repeated that same analysis, would you have different results? How quickly would the results change because innovation and all this stuff is changing so fast?
Yeah.
In other words.
Yeah, we've actually built into our system the ability to track the technologies that you might be interested in almost on a month-to-month basis. In all honesty, like we were talking, like Jerry was mentioning, you need a significant amount of data in order to move and ship and reshape the model. But tracking these changes becomes even more critical. And so even if you don't invest in something, keeping your eye on a field that is important to you and understanding when the right moment to invest and jump in is that still that value add that we offer. So absolutely, everything changes every day. Tomorrow, a new discovery, a new model in AI could be published that'll transform our human capacity to innovate. So that's why we are able to track on a regular basis what will change, what matters for you, and how that impacts your model in the long run. Great question. Thanks, David.
Other questions?
So when it comes to patents, some companies' IP strategy can include just dumping junk patents, right?
Just
and
a
even
patent.
in the academic world, there's a lot of questionable quality publications. Can you touch on how do you de-risk that within your model and your system?
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that a lot of companies just patent for patent's sake.
Right, that can
Yeah.
be just part of the
We have a legal team. Just go ahead, guys.
Yeah, or they
You're not doing anything on Thursday.
They want to confuse their competitors, so they're going to dump a bunch of stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't work. So how do you de-risk from capturing that?
Yeah, exactly. And so you've noticed that, right?
Mhm.
And so I would assume And we've seen that researchers are not, writ large, not stupid. And so part of our development cycle metrics looks at patent centrality. So it's a number of forward citations for the patent, which essentially means if another researcher finds your work interesting and cites you and builds on it, it adds weight, credence, credibility to it. If another researcher out there sees, oh, this is just, I don't know, 3M just patenting for patent's sake, just to get out their portfolio, not many people, I would presume, would reference it. There might be some, yes, but by looking at the relative densities of the references of that, essentially saying, if other people, in simple terms, if other people thought your work was good and used it to build onto that technology, improving that specific technology by X orders of magnitude or even just an iteration, then it has weight to it and it gets mapped and tracked by our model. Does that make sense?
Impact factors then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you say something interesting and I say, well, it's like what I did in my talk even. It was like, oh, Alexa made some great points. I'm gonna build on that. And Alexa made some other points. I want to build on that. It was the actual manifestation of what we do as humans. If it's a good idea, it's even the ping pong effect. I forget the gentleman that was here before. When we build off of other ideas, we create better ideas. And it's that same concept. So that's built into the model.
We have a question that came in from the outside. Is your method in the search based on patent and research data alone, or are there insights from customers in the market?
I actually got that question yesterday as well. It's purely based on the research itself because that's the easier to quantify. As we all know, humans are quite pernicious. We change our minds. If anyone has done any kind of design sprint or any consumer interview, we know how crazy these kind of sessions can get. I've done plenty myself, and that's why we like to filter out. There's enough noise in research and data for us to focus our efforts in there than to include humans in the mix. In fact, fun fact, I wanted to push for more AI involvement in our process. And our CTO wanted to actually ignore that and just focus when we have AI in the system. But in the first versions that we were creating, he was able to do all of this by hand, like actually calculate the citations, forward citations, the cycles and everything using a pen and paper. He comes from MIT, so they're an entirely different breed there. But he basically was just adamant that anyone could have a direct mathematical traceability into ideas and information and where they're coming from, as opposed to introducing more, oh, Jeff from Insight meeting number 46 didn't like the color blue, and so now, DuPont is red. So to answer that question, it's a great question. I'd love to eventually include elements where we add, I would call them extraneous variables. I understand how they're relevant for market sizing and those kind of things, but I'd like to keep it mainly focused on the unraveling of ideas and technologies and things that you can actually measure, building off of Wright's law metrics to make the insights actionable and meaningful and valuable. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, we have
Brand.
one more. Please.
I have a quick question on, as you scour the landscape and you have these intersections, these various technologies, and I'll use the L'Oreal example.
Yeah.
I have no idea what industrial refrigeration or coolant systems have to do with L'Oreal and that connection. But in that example, you're introducing new materials, new forms of materials, maybe new processes that you have to install to use and work with those materials. And so that company has to be willing to not be beholden to their fixed asset profile, their process knowledge that they have, right? And DuPont's a good example. If they started in gunpowder and 200 years later, they're making fibers, that's a pretty dramatic shift in materials and processes.
In infrastructure alone.
So how do those companies wrestle with the potential for, I'm used to using minerals to make my
Yeah.
makeup, but now you're telling me I have to use something completely different.
That's a great question. It starts with understanding the boundaries of your operation. So our first conversation together is really about what can you reasonably do. Understanding what your industries, what your manufacturing lines, what your systems actually are capable of doing, and working within the realm of your capabilities. And we work with like the Fortune 1000. And so I would presume that for the most part, I want to make and please correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 80% of the systems in place are quite amenable to new technological applications with some adjustments. And even if that was not the case, and this is sort of an extra add-on, we have close to $140 billion worth of startup networks that we can tap into of startup companies already building in that space, such that if you don't have a CRISPR machine, but a startup in the University of Eindhoven, for instance, does, we'll make a quick phone call. You give them a call. Maybe we do like a little acqui-hire, or you just make a partnership, or whatever deal you got to do. That's once you start putting that on the table, that's your business. We can actually connect you to the people building in that space. And that's the real utility of the entire system. It's connecting the legacy businesses of today with the people building the future, not only to bulletproof the industries that exist, but to give them a fighting chance for tomorrow. And so that also means adapting to it. And so, but conversely, I would argue that from the stories I've heard, a lot of times you let the business do the talking. The business was doing the leading. And what if a customer says, oh, we want to work on this material, then you build an entire industry around that. And then you're like, all right, now that we have an entire warehouse system, who else needs this? So rather than hedge all of our bets on one thing and then say, okay, guys, now we have blue paint. Who wants blue paint? Like we got yellow paint for Caterpillar. Now who else needs yellow? Instead of doing that, before you build and before you invest, which is tens of millions, if not billions of dollars of investment and manpower and time, and you're years down the road, and now you have an infrastructure for one client that you then are like, where do I go now? Why not start smart and use mathematics to change the course of where your investments are, where they'll really matter?